Um, let me see who we got here. And I want to welcome Leanna Etkind, who's joined us this morning. Morning, Leanna, if you want to unmute.
Good morning.
I was just explaining to everybody, I don't know whether you heard that we're actually going onto YouTube because Facebook, the link doesn't seem to be working this morning. So we're going to try and just copy the link onto the Facebook page, and then people will be able to nip over onto YouTube to follow us. So climate change seems to be in the press an awful lot today. I'm just going to sort of mute a few people just because there's some background noise. So why is climate change on your agenda, and why should it be on the Board of Deputies agenda? Maybe you can tell us about it. So the floor is yours, and then people can ask questions, I guess.
Thank you, Ed. And first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. It's really lovely to see all these faces from Jewish communities all around the country. Climate change has been on my agenda for a very long time, since I was at school and growing up with watching Captain Planet cartoons. And then climate change was about the polar bears and saving the polar bears. And when I got a bit older, I went to university and got involved in climate change campaigning. Then it was about saving the people in Bangladesh from the floods, and people in sub-Saharan Africa from the droughts. And then fast forward to around now, or 2 or 3 years ago, I read an article called The Uninhabitable Earth online on the New York Magazine, which brought together lots of the science of climate change and climate change projections, particularly factoring in the lag between the carbon emissions that we're giving out now and the effect that they have in years' time. And I got really, really scared because it talked about really the collapse of civilization. And it's hard to say that without sounding like a nutter. But when one factors in tipping points, such as methane being released from under Siberia as the ice melts, it looks very, very scary. And I stopped thinking in terms of climate change and started thinking in terms of climate emergency and the effect on us now and people alive today not being able to be confident about having enough food to eat. And that was really a catalyst for me re-engaging with climate change campaigning. And it's really been encouraging to see that in the last few years, polling shows that concern about climate emergency has really, really gone up. And I think that's partly due to some of the political actions and protests and Extinction Rebellion, but also because of the media really catching up to where science has been for a long time, and also broadcasting some of the really distressing things that are happening as a result of climate change. I'm sure lots of people here will remember, maybe you even live in places where this happens, the floods and that classic image of Worcester Cathedral above the flood waters. And then in the last couple of years, the wildfires in Australia, in California, people fleeing their homes and seeing their homes and their lives go up in smoke. And the droughts as well. My uncle lives in South Africa, and there was a point there where they had to choose every day, are they going to flush their toilet or are they going to shower? They couldn't do both. And they felt that they were, I think at the last point, about a week from absolutely having no water coming out the taps at all. And that is the place we are. So yeah, this climate emergency motion that's coming before the Board of Deputies is an opportunity, hopefully, for us to recognise as a community what's happening, and I hope will be a catalyst for change and for more action.
Thank you, Liana. In terms of it being a focus for the Jewish community, I can see why it's important to all communities, the wider community, including Jews, including all faiths, but why particularly the Jewish community?
I feel it's really important that we as Jews step up and play our part. I think partly it's historic when I think back about challenges of previous years, like the civil rights movement, the Jewish community's always stepped up and become a part of those big historical challenges. And I think this is the challenge of our day. And lots of other communal organizations and institutions have recognized climate emergency now. So 310 local authorities in the UK have, and lots more nationwide. And the UK Parliament in 2019 recognised climate emergency, the National Assembly in Wales, the Scottish Parliament, the Church of England and the Methodist Church have now, and even the Pope has declared climate emergency. And it's really welcome that, you know, emergency can sound like quite alarmist language, yet some quite small c conservative institutions like the Pope are recognising that this is an emergency and radical action is needed. And I think there's a power in the Jewish community being a part of that movement, as we are, in terms of engagement with lots of climate campaigning that's happening on the ground, and also a power in the way that that can spread from the Board of Deputies to individual communities' actions. So lots of you will have heard of Eco Synagogue, and lots of synagogues are already a part of that, thinking about their individual water consumption and electricity use. And the board proposal that's coming up in March encourages all constituent organisations of the board to take appropriate action alongside Eco Synagogues and other partners, both on the ground in our buildings and in our education that happens at our cheder, and also politically creating that atmosphere of urgency that's needed for the government to act. And there's a power in that.
And Ruth has asked, what is your actual role? Do you have a role within the Board of Deputies? And what is the board, part two of the question, what is the board planning to do if this motion gets passed?
It's a really good question. I don't have any connection with the board other than belonging to a synagogue, to Beth Shalom in Cambridge, which sends a deputy to the board. My involvement in this motion is because I've been involved in climate change campaigning for a good long time, and through that 2 years ago I met Talia Chain, who works at the Jewish farms Sadeh. I don't know if people may raise their hands if they've heard of Sadeh, but it is this wonderful Jewish farm in Kent near Orpington, where they grow lots of veggies organically, and they welcome lots of youth movements and lots of synagogues to understand more about Judaism's agricultural origins, and to learn about sustainability. And I used to volunteer there, and Talia is a deputy. Sadeh is a communal organisation, and she, together with someone called Amos Schoenfeld, are proposing this motion. So it was basically my friendship and my history of campaigning with Talia that made me think this is something that I care about, and maybe it's something that I can get involved in lobbying for. And the second part of the question was about what will the board actually do if it declares climate emergency. I'm going to share in the chat a briefing, and maybe this could be circulated afterwards as well, of the actual motion. I'm not going to read it all out, but I think the important part at the end says, this climate emergency requires coordinated action and will require economic divestment from oil and gas, a switch to renewable energy sources, and participation in educational initiatives such as Green Shabbat. This meeting therefore calls on all constituent organisations of the board to take appropriate action alongside Eco Synagogues and other partners to ensure they achieve zero carbon emissions by the target date.
You just sent that to me and the link doesn't work, so...
Oh, it doesn't work, I'm sorry.
Plus you sent it as a direct message to me, so...
Right. Sorry, who's that speaking? I can't see on that.
That's Fiona.
I will do that.
Yeah. You just copy.
It's about, I suppose, like lots of things in the Jewish community, it works best in a decentralized way, that there's a kind of coordinated response from the board, but then it's up to each individual congregation and community on the ground responding to different needs in different parts of the country about what kind of action they require and want to take together.
I can't make the link work, sorry.
I've posted that in the chat to you, Fiona. Does that work?
Right. I just put everybody back onto gallery view there. So I'd like to invite any other sort of comments or questions from the rest of the group. And
I'd really love to hear how many of you participate in the board and send a representative. Is the board something that kind of is on your radar?
Hi, Leanna. I'm Joe. I'm the chairman of Catford Synagogue, which, in case you don't know, is in Bromley. And my grandchildren love Seder Farm. They go there, or did go there regularly. My eldest grandson has worked there. He's 18 now, and it's a wonderful place. And obviously, it's quite close to our community, so we use it. We use it regularly. And answer to your second question, yes, we have a very good representative on the board, and I think they do pretty good work. I know that they are trying to improve their situation in the small communities area. Mainly in the past has always concentrated so much on London, but the current president is trying to broaden that, and she spoke to us not so long ago. So yes, two positives to your questions.
Thanks, Joe.
It's really great to hear. I used to live until summer this year in Forest Hill in southeast London, so not too far.
Whereabouts? I had a business there.
Oh, next to the Horniman Museum.
On lovely. On Oak Road, yeah, lovely, yeah. Excellent.
Gillian's put a question in the chat, but Gillian, can I invite you to actually put your question in person?
Hi, thank you. Good morning. Yes, my question was, Jews represent a minute fraction of the world's population. So what effect do you think this will have globally?
That's a really good question. I guess that although Jews represent a fraction of the world's population, we have historically been disproportionately represented in lots of important movements. And also the COP conference of parties deciding on climate change is happening here in the UK in the next year. And so where we're obviously a bigger proportion of the UK population than the global community. And so I think that we do have power in this situation. Part of that is about our communal institutions and our I just saw Fiona's thing about Scottish Jews will be there welcoming people at COP26. That's wonderful. Our power on the ground in our communities, in Cambridge, in Forest Hill, in Cardiff, and what we can do there, but also in pension funds, in financial institutions just deciding about divestment, in NGOs which are working on policy questions of climate, in government, in diplomacy where people are negotiating about the fine wording of what the agreements are, in business where businesses are working towards zero carbon. There isn't an area of life like arts and culture where climate change isn't featured and where our response doesn't make a difference. And Jews are represented in all of those areas and already doing like really, I think in all of those areas, I can think of Jews who are playing a part in responding to climate emergency. Do you have a thought about that, Gillian?
I've got workmen here, that's why I keep muting myself. No, I thought that was a very good response, and it's interesting what you say, that it's the effect of these large global companies. If some influence can be brought to bear on them, then change can come about, because after all, we are custodians of the planet, and it is our responsibility to look after it.
And thanks, Gillian. Any other comments, or any comments from Leanna or from Fiona, perhaps.
I'll just say that Leanna had been in touch with an organisation that I've been helping with, and she just asked a question about which other faith movements had declared a climate emergency, and I thought it would be a really good idea for her to come here, just so that this giving people from all over the country a chance to think about the issues and maybe talk to your deputy if you're not the deputy, and that this is a place to have informal chats with deputies rather than at the board meeting. And I think that one of the answers to Gillian is that if the board declared a climate emergency, it would then come back to each of us in our communities. But Lancaster and Lakes isn't a member of the board at the moment, but just thinking about the Jewish community in Britain has declared a climate emergency, I think it gives an extra impetus to all of us in our communities to think about making our own communities think about what our individual effects are on the planet and what we can do individually. Our sphere of influence.
I've been really proud recently to see the board lobbying government about the Uyghur Muslims.
Sorry?
And
how did it ring me when he got here?
No, sorry, go on.
I've been really proud to see the board lobbying government recently about the plight of Uyghur Muslims, and the board speaks regularly to government and to elected politicians. And I think that declaring climate emergency can affect the way that we interact with government on this.
Michelle Hayward, but you've just posted a comment. Would you like to just address that?
No, it's just that Gillian previously put a chat message about what was Leanne's attitude to the Extinction Rebellion.
I'm a big fan of Extinction Rebellion. I know they're not flavour of the month with everyone, but I've been along to and participated in some of the protests, and there's been an incredible Extinction Rebellion Jewish contingent. And I feel like they have been part of the way that the political window has shifted on this. They've been really disruptive, and but when I look at the way that the newspaper coverage has shifted, and the way that the YouGov polled people about what they thought about climate emergency, and there were two big spikes. One was when the floods of 2014 happened, and then there was another big spike when the big Extinction Rebellion march is happening. So I think they're a part of an ecology of change. There's the insider lobbying, there's the writing to your MP, there's the signing petitions, there's the on the ground planting the trees, and then there's direct action as well. And I think many great movements like for women's rights and suffrage and civil rights have had that ecology of change that includes direct action.
I suppose the demographic represented in this room is perhaps an older demographic, and one which is perhaps not quite as activist in that direct action way, and perhaps this is in a slightly more negative way, so that there is obviously there is a big international conference going on in Scotland soon, and there's the controversial planning of the new coal mine in Cumbria, which is in today's news. Fiona's just posted a long message which you can read for yourselves because it's too long for me to read and consume just now. But Jan, is there anything that you would like people to go away and think about, and go away and think about in terms of the Board of Deputies motion, which I said earlier is now moved from February into March. So is there anything you'd like people to think about in that respect?
The one thing to do is to contact your deputy and ask them to come along to the March meeting and vote to recognise climate emergency, or go along yourself if you, like Gillian, are a deputy. What I've understood from Talia, who's proposing the motion, is that because it's happening on Zoom, you don't even have to come for the whole Board of Deputies meeting, because I understand sometimes they can be quite marathon Sunday afternoon sessions. And yeah, I've had quite a positive response to the people, the deputies I've contacted so far. I think climate emergency isn't as controversial as it once was, but I think it is about getting the numbers there to vote to recognise it. There may be a hardcore of people who vote against, and so I really hope that some of the deputies from synagogues who don't go to every meeting on Sunday will go along to this one and vote for a climate emergency, because if the Board of Deputies does support that, I think it can be a catalyst for community-wide change.
Leanna, thank you very much. Is there any final comments on climate change that anybody wants to make? Yes, Brian.
Being part of an older cohort, I'm very aware that climate change is not something that we're going to have to live with. I'm sure we're all very concerned that it's going to affect our children and our grandchildren and, Bezrat Hashem, our great-grandchildren. And one thing that worries me a little bit about the likes of Extinction Rebellion is that if you look at what they seem to be preaching, the logical end game is that they want to push the whole world back to pre the Industrial Revolution. And that ain't going to happen because you can't put the genie back into the bottle.
No, this is very true. And, you know, but I think some of the things that we do need to address about climate change are directly associated with what we're doing today. You know, COVID and doing everything virtually, like these Zoom meetings, consumes an amazing amount of power. Now, some organizations, you know, publicize what they're doing about it. I know Amazon have huge solar farms which power some of their servers, which are behind services like Zoom. And so, you know, that is being approached that way. I don't know if that is foregrounded in this argument as much as some other things, which are a bit more local. But, you know, we're affected today in what we're doing here. And I agree with Brian that, you know, many of us, it's not that directly affecting us, but it is directly affecting our families to come, and our children, our children's children, and so on and so forth. So it's really our responsibility now for them. Fiona has posted details about what's going on in Skojec, and I think that event is posted or will be posted soon on our Jewish events calendar. So you should be able to link into that from there if you can't get it from the chat that Fiona's put up there. I just want to thank Leanna for highlighting this and asking us to, you know, really consider our responsibilities, both as Jews and as part of, you know, the worldwide community. And do you have a last word, Leanna, or anything thought you'd like to leave us with?
A big thank you. It's just one of the nice things, if there are any nice things about the pandemic, is to be in a room with people from Hull and Exeter and Aberdeen and Lancaster and feel that sense of Jewish connection around the country. Thanks very much. Thanks,
Leanna. And if anybody wants to catch up with that or tell their community members about it to raise awareness, then you can go onto the JSCN UK YouTube channel, and that's where we've been live streaming, and that's where it'll be archived and the recording available to watch later. So thanks very much, Leanna, and thanks for coming in this morning.